My mom told me not to bring the kids for Christmas. Said they needed a quiet one. The next morning, I saw their living room full of people I'd never met. I sent one text, and everything exploded. Christmas was supposed to be magical. At least, that's what I kept telling myself while my kids sat at the kitchen table, faces sticky with frosting, proudly holding up gingerbread men that looked like they'd survived a small explosion. Then my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was cheerful, too cheerful. "Sweetheart," she said, "we're thinking of taking a quiet Christmas this year. Just us. No kids this time. We really need a break." I froze with a spatula in my hand. The smell of cinnamon filled the air, and I could hear my 5-year-old humming Jingle Bells in the next room. I didn't say anything at first. What could I say? I just nodded even though she couldn't see me. When the call ended, I stood there, still holding the phone, trying to come up with something to tell the kids that wouldn't make them feel unwanted. How do you explain to a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old that Grandma and Grandpa don't want them around for Christmas? That night, after they went to bed, I cried quietly into my hands. I'd been planning something big that year. Something to make my parents proud. For months, I'd worked 2 jobs, skipped new clothes, and even said no to a much-needed weekend getaway. All because Dad had once mentioned he wished his car didn't sound like a shopping cart. So, I made it happen. A 2014 silver Civic, clean, reliable, not flashy, but perfect. I bought it, hid it in a friend's garage, and wrapped the keys in a tiny box with a photo of the car. It was supposed to be a surprise. My big, I did it moment. Maybe, just maybe, they'd see how hard I'd been working, maybe they'd finally see me. So when Mom said not to come, I didn't fight it. I figured maybe they needed space. Maybe it wasn't personal. Christmas morning came. I made pancakes, turned on carols, and watched the kids tear open their gifts. I smiled, laughed, pretended everything was fine. Then, around noon, I made the mistake of opening Facebook. There they were, my parents, laughing by the tree. Dad in a Santa hat, Mom holding a mug of cocoa, and my sister, Katie, sitting on the couch with her new boyfriend, Sean. And 2 teenage boys I didn't recognize. It took me a moment to realize, they were Sean's nephews. Strangers. Invited into my parents' home while my own children sat in pajamas asking why we weren't going to Nana's this year. Something inside me went very still. I zoomed in on the photo, my dad's arm around one of the boys, both smiling like old pals. That's when I picked up my phone, snapped a photo of the Civic, and sent it to Dad with one line. "I don't think you need it anymore." 40 minutes later, there was pounding at my front door. Not a polite knock, pounding. I didn't rush to answer. I just kept picking up toys from under the tree while the knocking echoed through the house. My hands weren't trembling from fear. It was something else, something sharp and cold that I couldn't even name. When I finally opened the door, I wasn't surprised. Dad stood there, red-faced, not from the cold, and beside him was Sean. The boyfriend. The one whose nephews apparently ranked higher than his own grandkids. Dad didn't waste a second. He said if the car was really meant for him, he wanted to give it to Katie and Sean. "They're thinking about starting a family," he said, "and it would really help them get on their feet." He said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Like I'd just nod, hand over the keys, and thank him for the opportunity. I just stared. Sean looked at the ground. Dad kept talking, about how gifts are supposed to bring families together, how I was being selfish for taking it back over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I asked him if he understood what it was like to lie to my kids, to tell them Grandma and Grandpa were too tired for Christmas, only to see strangers sitting in our spots. My 5-year-old made them a card, I said quietly. My 3-year-old kept asking if Nana would have hot cocoa. Then I looked straight at Sean. "Do you think it's normal to show up to someone else's family Christmas with 2 random teenagers, when you know their daughter and grandkids weren't invited?" He opened his mouth but said nothing. Dad got angry then. He said the car wasn't about me. That this was my chance to do something good for the family. I just looked at him and asked, "What family? The one that forgot we existed?" That did it. His jaw tightened. He said fine, then asked to at least see the car. "Maybe once you calm down, we can talk it through." I smiled, just barely. "Maybe," I said. "Let them think they had a chance." Then I added, "No. The gift isn't yours anymore," I told them. "And I don't owe you anything. Leave." For a second, they both just stood there, like they couldn't believe I'd actually said no. Like they still thought I was the quiet one, the peacemaker, the pushover. Then I closed the door. The knocking came back, harder this time, but I didn't move. I stood there, calm as ever, and said through the wood, "If you don't leave, I'll call the cops." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said it. Through the peephole, I watched them walk away, Dad waving his arms, still talking, Sean following behind in silence. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I just felt done. But I had no idea that wasn't the end. The next morning, the air was sharp and quiet, the kind of winter cold that makes the world feel hollow. I slipped outside in my hoodie and slippers, just trying to take the trash out before the kids woke up. The neighborhood was still half asleep, and for a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, things were finally calming down. Then I saw it. The Civic. It looked off. Tilted, just slightly. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I walked closer, crunching over the frost, and that's when I saw them, both rear tires, slashed clean open. Not random. Not a slow leak. Clean, deliberate cuts. Precise. Surgical, even. I stood there for a long moment, the trash bag hanging loosely from my hand. The air was still, almost too still. No cars passing, no sound except the faint hum of someone's heater down the block. It wasn't just vandalism. It was a message. A punishment. For saying no. For daring to keep something they'd already decided didn't belong to me. I didn't call the cops. What was I supposed to say? Hey, my father might have sent someone to slash my tires? I didn't have proof, just that gut-deep certainty that either he or Sean, or someone acting on their behalf, had a hand in it. Maybe they hadn't done it themselves. Maybe they just said the right thing loud enough for someone stupid to take action. Either way, I knew why it happened. The tow cost me $140. A new set of tires? Another $420. That was January's groceries. Gas. Lunch money. Gone. I didn't tell a soul. I just handled it, like I always do. That's what they never seem to understand. I keep things running, even when I shouldn't have to. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my old spiral notebook, the one where I track every expense. The pages were soft at the corners, worn from years of late nights like this. I wrote down, car emergency, $560. I didn't bother labeling it as revenge. I didn't need to. I knew what it was. And deep down, I knew it wouldn't end there. A few days later, I decided I was done waiting for decency. I drove to Mom's house without calling first. The engine hummed the whole way, a reminder of the car that started all this. When she opened the door, she looked at me like I was a stranger selling solar panels. No warmth. No surprise. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Do you know anything about what happened to the Civic? She blinked, then gave this little shrug, tight, dismissive. Maybe someone in your neighborhood's got it out for you, she said. That was it. Not even fake concern. No, oh my God, are you okay? Just cold air and indifference. I left before I said something I'd regret. Next stop, Dad's house. He opened the door but didn't step aside. I didn't wait for pleasantries. Did you slash my tires? I asked. He smiled, that smug little half-smile he always used when he wanted to look innocent. Maybe this whole car thing wasn't such a good idea after all, he said, and then laughed. That laugh, it went straight through me. I didn't say a word. I just turned, got in my car, and drove away. On the way home, everything started replaying, every forgotten birthday, every missed call, every time I tried to keep that thread of family connection alive when I was the only one pulling. It all pressed down on me until it was hard to breathe. Somewhere between the stoplight and my driveway, I realized something painful but freeing. They were never going to care. New Year's came and went. I didn't post anything. Didn't call. Didn't check in. Just silence. 5 days later, my phone rang. It wasn't my dad. It was Katie. That alone was weird. We hadn't spoken since the car incident. She hadn't even liked a single photo of my kids in over a year. Her voice was calm, too calm. Like she'd been rehearsing. Dad was in an accident, she said. He's okay, but it's bad. He'd rear-ended someone on an icy back road. His old car. The one I'd tried to replace. The one I'd worked myself half to death to upgrade for him. Then came the kicker. He hadn't renewed his insurance since November. The other driver was pressing charges, and Dad was on the hook for all of it. I sat there, silent, just letting it sink in. But Katie wasn't finished. He was on his way to meet someone, she said carefully. Not Mom. Some woman he's been talking to online. For months. I stared at the wall. My throat went dry. Dad, the man who lectured me for being a single mom, who said my life was a mess, was sneaking around behind Mom's back. And on his way to meet his secret woman, he wrecked his car. The same one he'd refused to replace. It wasn't just a disaster. It was poetic. Katie waited, maybe expecting me to gasp or offer help. I didn't. I just let the silence sit there between us, heavy and final. Later that afternoon, there was another knock at my door. This time, it wasn't angry, it was hesitant. When I opened it, I almost didn't recognize him. My dad. He looked smaller somehow. His jacket was soaked through from the slush, his face pale and tired. For about 10 seconds, he didn't say a single word. Just stood there, breathing hard, eyes darting to the floor like he didn't know where to start. Then finally, he spoke. He said the other driver from the accident was already asking for compensation. That his savings wouldn't cover it. He sounded desperate. He said he needed help. Then, almost too casually, he added, if you still have the Civic, maybe you could loan it to me? Just until things settle. He said it like it was reasonable. Like I was just being stubborn before, and this was my chance to make things right. I looked at him for a long moment, and then I asked, very calmly, does Mom know about the woman? His face changed instantly. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered with that same guilt I'd seen when I was a kid and he'd been caught lying. He didn't answer. So I kept going. I reminded him of all the times he'd mocked me for being a single mom. How he'd said I was too sensitive for feeling left out, too dramatic for setting boundaries. How he'd rolled his eyes when I said the kids missed him, told me they were too loud, too slow, too much. Then I asked if he wanted me to teach him how to lie to his wife. I'm pretty good at it, I said. Had to be, for years. To protect my kids from feeling unwanted because of you. He went silent. Couldn't even look at me. I smiled then. Not out of kindness, just control. I'll think about it, I said. Maybe I can help. I watched hope flicker in his eyes, like he was already picturing himself behind the wheel again. Then I added softly, you should go. He blinked. Are you serious? I didn't repeat myself. I didn't have to. He stood there for a second, like he still expected the keys to appear in his hand. But they didn't. And when I shut the door, he didn't knock again. He just stood there for a moment, then walked away through the falling snow. I leaned against the door, exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. That clarity didn't fade, it spread. It hit me later that night when I sat down at my laptop. I opened my messages with Katie, scrolled to our last thread about her beauty course tuition. For months, I'd been covering the payments because she just needed help getting started. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for half a second. Then I typed, "You'll need to handle next month's payment yourself." Sent. The read receipt popped up almost instantly. Then, silence. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then again. I ignored the calls. Then came her text. "I thought you supported me. I thought you wanted us to succeed." That word, us. Not her. Not her dream. Us. She wasn't asking anymore. She was demanding, as if I owed it to her, the same way Dad thought I owed him that car. Like generosity had turned into obligation. I didn't reply. I left her on read and went back to folding laundry. The next day, Mom called. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. Then came the voicemail, her voice soft, almost rehearsed. "I'm worried," she said. "I think we should talk this out." I didn't call back. But the day after, when she tried again, I answered. I needed to hear it, to make sure I wasn't imagining how deep this really went. She got to the point fast. "Have you spoken to your father?" she asked. "No," I said. Pause. Then, carefully. "Do you have any idea who the woman is?" That's when it clicked. He hadn't told her. She was fishing for confirmation. I didn't give it. Instead, she switched tactics, classic mom. She said this wasn't the time for grudges, that Dad was under stress, that the car situation had spiraled. I told her I didn't see it as a grudge. "It's just clarity," I said. "I finally understand where I stand." Then I reminded her how she told me not to bring the kids for Christmas. How strangers sat under their tree where my children should have been. How not one person in that house thought to ask how they felt. Then I asked her quietly, "When's the last time you even spoke to my kids?" Silence. She didn't have an answer. So I gave her mine. "Maybe it's time you start figuring things out without me," I said. "The way I've always had to figure things out without you." And before she could find the words to guilt me again, I hung up. That night, the family group chat, the same one that used to buzz with recycled holiday memes, happy birthday gifts, and half-hearted emoji replies, went completely silent. No more awkward Happy New Year messages. No check-ins. Nothing. Just silence. For a moment, I felt the weight of it. The kind of quiet that used to mean something was wrong. But then I sat on the floor with my kids. We made paper snowflakes, even though Christmas was long over. The floor was covered in tiny bits of paper and laughter. They giggled at a cartoon that made absolutely no sense, and I laughed too, not because it was funny, but because it was peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt calm. Over the next week, I started noticing little things. Katie stopped posting her perfectly filtered selfies with those fake deep quotes about healing and family. Mom stopped forwarding her usual recipe videos and life hack reels I never asked for. And Dad, he just vanished. By February, it was official. We weren't pretending to be a family anymore. By mid-February, the quiet had shifted into something else. Something solid. It wasn't tense anymore, or uncomfortable. It was just absence. No calls. No texts. No, just wondering how you're doing messages. And you know what? It didn't feel like loss. It felt like freedom. Like I'd finally stepped out of a room that had been shrinking around me for years and into air that actually let me breathe. One night, after the kids were asleep, I sat alone with my phone and scrolled through the photos from Christmas. My kids, smiling wide on the carpet, holding gifts wrapped in newspaper because I couldn't afford fancy paper that year. The photo of the Civic, the one I never gave them. The tow truck receipt. The repaired car sitting clean in the driveway like a symbol of everything I'd survived. I kept swiping. Then, without really thinking about it, I opened a flight app and typed in, "Anywhere warm." I wasn't planning a trip, not really. Just imagining. But then I saw it, Clearwater Beach. Cheap round trip. 4 nights at a modest motel that didn't promise luxury, just a break. And for once, I didn't overthink it. I clicked, book. Some of that money had been meant for groceries. Some for bills. But I made it work, like I always do. When I told the kids, I just said, "We're going on an adventure." I didn't say who wasn't invited. We flew out the last week of February. It was their first time on a plane. My 3-year-old cried during takeoff, gripping my sleeve so tight it left little handprints. My 5-year-old fell asleep 5 minutes later, mouth open, completely unbothered. When we landed, it was 72 degrees. The air smelled like salt and sunscreen. Palm trees swayed over the parking lot, and seagulls screamed overhead like they didn't care who I hadn't spoken to in months. The motel was nothing fancy, chipped paint, noisy air conditioner, a view of the parking lot, but it was ours. And the beach was only 2 blocks away. The kids ran straight for the sand, laughing so loud I swear the ocean itself turned to listen. Every day, we collected shells and tiny rocks. Every night, we shared microwave popcorn while watching cartoons. And on the second night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I posted a photo. Just one. The kids, sunlit and messy-haired, holding up a lopsided sandcastle like it was a masterpiece. No caption. No hashtags. No explanation. I knew they saw it. I also knew they wouldn't say anything. On the third night, I got a message. From Dad. "Did you really sell the car?" That was it. No, hi. No, I'm sorry. No mention of the accident, the woman, the slashed tires, or the silence that had stretched between us for months. Just that one line. I stared at it for a while, then set my phone down and turned off notifications. Because the truth was, I'd already answered him. When we got home, I sold the Civic within a week. Took the cash, paid off the last bit of credit card debt that had been hanging over me for years, and put the rest straight into savings. It felt good. Simple. Mine. A week later, Katie texted me. "Guess you're done pretending to care." I didn't reply. Because she was right. I am done pretending. I care about what matters now, my kids, our tiny, warm world, and the laughter that fills it. The kind of laughter that doesn't need anyone's approval. The kind that feels like peace. For years, I wondered what it would take for them to finally see me, really see me, as someone who mattered. Now, I don't care if they ever do. They had their chance to be part of our story. They chose not to be. And that story, our story, finally feels like it's just beginning. It's been months now since everything with my family came crashing down. Winter melted into spring. Spring drifted into heat waves. And somewhere in between, I stopped waking up with that tight knot in my chest, the one that used to make me feel like I was about to be blamed for something, or like I'd forgotten to do some invisible chore no one ever thanked me for anyway. The kids are thriving. My 5-year-old has entered his big questions phase, space bugs, why people lie, why toast always falls butter side down. My 3-year-old finally learned the difference between a whisper and a scream, which in our house feels like winning the lottery. Our mornings are still chaotic, still messy, but they're ours. Completely ours. I hadn't planned on posting again. I thought my story had ended. But last weekend caught me off guard. I was at the grocery store, pushing a cart with one hand and trying to keep my toddler from launching bananas with the other, when I saw her. My mom. She looked smaller somehow. Less composed than I remembered. Her basket had just 3 things, 2 apples and a frozen dinner. She noticed me before I could duck down another aisle. Our eyes locked, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then she started walking toward me slowly, like she wasn't sure I'd let her get close. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't mention what happened. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I don't expect anything," she said softly. "I just hope you'll read it." I didn't say a word. Just nodded, took it, and pushed my cart forward. I didn't read it that night. I let it sit on the counter. Then another night passed. And another. On the 3rd night, after the kids were asleep, I finally opened it. It was her handwriting, careful, almost hesitant. Not a grand apology. No dramatic explanations. Just her saying she hadn't understood. That she assumed my strength meant I didn't need them. That she regretted how things unfolded, but understood why I walked away. She didn't ask me to fix anything. She just said she missed me. Missed the kids. It shook me more than I want to admit. I haven't answered. I don't know if I will. Right now, I'm still protecting what I've built, the peace, the space, the safety my kids and I finally have. I also got a message from Katie. No hi, no context, just a photo of a makeup kit with the caption. Back at it again. No explanation. No words. I didn't respond. I'm not ready to pretend everything's fine. I'm not sure I ever will be. Right now, my focus is here. On us. I finally booked the pediatric speech therapist I've been putting off forever. I found a side gig I can do from home at night. I'm planning a road trip for the fall, just the 3 of us, no one else. I don't know what comes next. Maybe there won't be another update after this. Maybe life will just keep unfolding quietly, the way it always should have. But to everyone who's read this far, who sent me messages, who rooted for me even silently, thank you. You made me feel seen at a time I was convinced I was invisible. Whatever happens next, we're okay. We really are.